there are few armed opposition groups in Iran or around Iran that would be there to overthrow the regime. The Kurds have been looked at as one potential group that could do that, and it seems that the CIA has already armed some Kurds from Iran within Iraq with small arms, not heavy weaponry.
Okay.
The idea that they become part of a force to rise up against the regime in Iran appears to have come from none other than Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, who took this idea to President Trump recently at the White House. And that's where the genesis of that plan has come from.
Let's talk about where the war goes next. Could Kurdish forces be used as ground forces to supplement attacks from the air in Iran? The Times this morning reports that the CIA and Israel are working to arm Kurdish forces in Iraq and Iran to help bring down the regime. The Times World Affairs editor Catherine Philp has been writing about this, and she joins us now. Good morning.
Hi, Kate.
For those who are joining this conversation and don't have as much expertise as you do, who are the Kurdish forces we're talking about, and why would these people agree to help?
So, listeners are probably most familiar with the Kurds from the offensive against Islamic State in Syria, and indeed going back to the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Their forces, the Kurds are an ethnic group within several different countries, Syria, Turkey, Iran, Iraq, who generally have quite a sort of pro-Western outlook, and have been used as support troops in those contexts. The Iranian Kurds are a group that are based both in Iran and across the border in Iraq, and are seeking not to carve out a separate homeland of their own, but to get more autonomy and more representation. Now, it's been said many times and remains the fact that there are few armed opposition groups in Iran or around Iran that would be there to overthrow the regime. The Kurds have been looked at as one potential group that could do that. And it seems that the CIA has already armed some Kurds from Iran within Iraq with small arms, not heavy weaponry.
Okay.
The idea that they become part of a force to rise up against the regime in Iran appears to have come from none other than Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, who took this idea to President Trump recently at the White House. And that's where the genesis of that plan has come from.
And Catherine, who would they answer to ultimately, and how would it work? What would the intention be here?
Well, that's a very good question, and I think there's a lot of issues with the motives involved in this. They would ultimately answer to themselves. They possibly might answer to the people who've armed them. History tells us how that goes. Sometimes people are not always do not always stick to doing exactly what you ask them to do once you've put weapons in their hands. But how it would work, again, is a very fraught question, because we got lots of reports overnight that turned out to be entirely false, that armed Kurds had already crossed the border from Iraq into Iran and taking up the fight. I think that there's certainly a wish from certain quarters to send a message to the regime in Tehran that there is the possibility of an armed uprising.
Yeah, that's really interesting, the propaganda element of this. And that may well have something to do with the amount of weaponry the Americans have available to them. What do we know about their stocks?
Yes, well, that's a very interesting question. So Trump said the other day when he was talking to the press that alongside the German Chancellor, he was boasting that America has unlimited munitions it can use in this fight. Particularly, this issue is particularly pertinent in the case of the air defenses it's using to shoot down what the Iranians are shooting at allies in the Gulf. Now, obviously, that's an absurd claim. No one has infinite ammunition, and the Americans do not. They are quite worried about the speed with which they're burning through their ammunition stocks. So worried, in fact, that they have invited defense executives to the White House to discuss how they can ramp up production. So, again, you're getting messaging that is trying to portray the American effort as infinite and invincible, when actually there is concern that however long this conflict goes on for, means that those stocks get depleted.
And that is absolutely fascinating in the face of a conversation we've already had this morning about the Israeli intentions here, which seem to be to run down Israel's stocks by continuing this as long as possible. We heard from a correspondent, Yotam Confino, in Israel, who says that Benjamin Netanyahu would like this to go on for months. Do you think finally that would be sustainable for America?
I think it'd be very, very hard for America. I can't say that they'll entirely run out, but that is not what they've been planning for. Before this offensive began, this war began, we learned that generals in America thought they could probably only sustain it at this pitch for 10 to 12 days. Trump has since said that this could go on for 4 to 5 weeks. I think that this is also showing up the fact that Israel and America may have very different goals in this military effort. And this is also pertinent to the issue of the Kurds, because a lot of people who I spoke to yesterday said that they were very concerned that Israel's goal here was simply to make to foment so much chaos inside Iran that the regime would be incapable of actually paying any attention to the region or meddling in the region, threatening Iran, threatening its neighbors. That they wanted a quagmire inside Iran that would tie up the regime and give it, no capacity to strike outside. Now, obviously, that's not in the interests of the Iranian people, and it's probably not really what the Americans want either, because that doesn't look like victory.
Yeah.
But it would suit Israel.
And that's the tension here, or at least one of them. Catherine, thank you so much for helping us navigate this stuff. It's been really great speaking to you this week.
Thank you.
That is the Times World Affairs editor, Catherine Philp.
And do read her piece on reporting the Times excellent. Just one paragraph I'm just going to read out, because Justin's raised the question, why should the Kurds trust Trump? President Trump spoke by phone to Kurdish leaders in Iraq and Iran in the past few days to urge them to get behind the plan, which can entail this offensive. The outreach comes only weeks after the Trump administration cut off support to the pro-Western Kurdish forces in Syria, who defeated Islamic State's caliphate on the ground, switching allegiance to the former Islamist government in Damascus. So Trump has basically withdrawn funding from the Syrian Kurds in order to support the government in Damascus. Will they trust him again is an interesting question.
And interesting there that Catherine was reflecting on what this means for the Iranian people. We will speak to someone inside Tehran in around 15 minutes' time.